The mornings had started to feel heavier, not because of time but because of the silence that came with it. Evan sat at the table with his cup of coffee, the sound of the spoon stirring echoing in the stillness of the house. Clara hummed faintly from across the room, her voice distant, disconnected, like someone singing to fill a space she no longer felt part of. Noah's paws tapped softly against the floor, tail wagging at no one in particular. Evan watched him for a while, realizing even the dog had stopped waiting for Clara's touch. He used to love these mornings, the smell of toast, her half-smile, the warmth of something domestic. Now it all felt rehearsed. Clara's smile never reached her eyes, and her phone never left her hand. When it buzzed, her shoulders tensed before she reached for it, as if she already knew who it was. Evan didn't ask anymore. Questions had become heavy things, better left unspoken. He noticed small changes first, the new perfume, the longer showers, the soft laughter she tried to hide when she thought he wasn't listening. Noah noticed too. The dog would follow her to the door, but not the way he used to. He'd pause before wagging his tail, as if unsure whether to trust his own joy. Sometimes he'd just sit and watch her leave, eyes low, ears flat, tail still. Evan told himself it was nothing. Maybe stress. Maybe distance. Maybe the kind of drift every marriage goes through. But one night, he found her standing by the window, phone in hand, whispering into it. Her tone was light, intimate, the way she used to speak to him once. She caught his reflection and quickly turned, pretending to scroll through something meaningless. Noah, lying by her feet, lifted his head, stared at her, then turned to Evan. That look, the dog's silent judgment, was what hurt most. The next day she mentioned someone new from work, Tyler. She said it casually, as if the name meant nothing, as if repetition wouldn't betray its weight. She mentioned him again the following week, then again, always with that same forced nonchalance. Tyler's project, Tyler's idea, Tyler said this funny thing. It was never enough to accuse, but too much to ignore. Evan noticed how she dressed differently now, how she lingered longer in front of the mirror before leaving. When she leaned down to tie her shoes, Noah approached, sniffed her hand, then turned away. Dogs, he thought, were strange. They could smell truth long before it reached words. That evening, as she rushed out saying she'd be home late, Evan knelt beside Noah. "Where's she going, huh?" he whispered. The dog tilted his head, ears twitching, uncertain. Evan smiled faintly, the kind of smile people used to hide cracks forming inside them. "Yeah," he said softly, "I don't know either." The clock ticked through hours that refused to pass. The television murmured in the background, a soundtrack for waiting. When the headlights finally brushed across the window, Evan didn't move. He heard the car door, the quiet footsteps, the front lock turning slowly, too slowly, as if she hoped not to be heard. Noah lifted his head before Evan did, ears pricking at the sound. Clara walked in quietly, her face a mask of exhaustion and something else, something she couldn't name but carried all over her. She smiled faintly when she saw him still awake, though her eyes darted quickly to Noah. The dog stood, stared for a long moment, then turned away and went to lie near the door. Her expression faltered. "He's been weird lately," she said, voice low. Evan nodded, eyes still on her. "He knows more than both of us." Later that night, as she pretended to sleep, Evan lay beside her, eyes open, staring into the dark. He could smell that unfamiliar perfume again, faint but sharp. He reached out, not to touch her, but to feel the space between them, the cold divide that once was warmth. Noah lay near the doorway, awake too, eyes glinting in the dim light. Days blended after that. She grew distant but defensive, smiling too much when she didn't need to, talking too little when she should have. Evan stopped asking where she was going. He didn't need to. Sometimes knowing destroys faster than finding out. Noah's habits changed too. He stopped sleeping beside their bed. Every night, he moved closer to the front door, as if waiting for something, or guarding against it. One evening, Evan found him sitting there, tail motionless, nose pressed to the bottom crack of the door. It was raining outside, soft and steady. Evan crouched down beside him, resting a hand on his back. "What are you hearing?" he whispered. Noah's ears twitched. Moments later, the faint sound of a car outside broke the silence. Evan rose slowly, walked to the window, and saw her car headlights glowing faintly through the drizzle. She didn't step out immediately. She sat there for a long time. When she finally did, she stood still, hands trembling as she fixed her coat. Then she entered quietly, unaware of the eyes that watched. Evan said nothing. He didn't need to. As she walked past, Noah's gaze followed her but didn't move closer. She reached down to pet him, but he turned his head away. She hesitated, confused, then whispered, "What's wrong with you lately?" He didn't respond. Neither did Evan. That night, as the house fell into silence again, Evan sat beside Noah, staring at the closed door she had just come through. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said softly. Noah rested his head on his knee, eyes heavy, quiet as breath. Evan looked toward the dim light spilling from the hallway, then back at the dog. "Maybe heaven isn't up there," he murmured. "Maybe it's wherever something honest still waits." Noah's eyes fluttered closed, the sound of rain filling the gaps between their silence. And for the first time, Evan realized the house didn't feel lonely, it felt truthful. The kind of truth that didn't need to be spoken to hurt. The kind that lived quietly in every heartbeat, every door that stayed closed just long enough to tell you someone was on the wrong side of it. Evan came home earlier than usual, the kind of early that feels accidental, like fate deciding it was time. The house was quiet except for Noah pacing near the hallway, ears twitching, tail stiff. Something about the way the dog moved, uneasy, restless, made Evan stop midway through the living room. Noah looked at him once, then trotted upstairs, glancing back as if asking him to follow. Evan's stomach tightened. He didn't call out. He just followed. Halfway up, he heard it, a muffled sound, faint but undeniable. Laughter, quick and breathless, followed by a whisper. The bedroom door was closed, a sliver of light cutting through the crack beneath. Noah stopped right there, sat down, and whimpered softly. Evan's chest felt hollow. The laughter faded. Then, hurried footsteps. The creak of the floor. A voice he didn't recognize, low and panicked. The door opened just enough for a figure to slip out, Tyler. His eyes widened when he saw Evan at the top of the stairs, frozen. No words, just a sharp intake of breath before he bolted down and out the door. Noah barked once, sharp and full of something primal, then went silent. Clara appeared in the doorway seconds later, face pale, hands trembling, eyes darting everywhere but his. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Evan didn't move. His voice, when it came, was quiet and steady. Was it worth it? The words hung in the air like a verdict. Tears filled her eyes, but guilt had already done its work. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. Evan's face stayed still, unreadable. "Then why did you let it?" She looked down, unable to answer. Noah stood between them, head lowered, a living line of judgment neither of them could cross. Clara tried to step forward, reaching for Evan's hand, but Noah growled, a low, heartbreaking sound that carried more meaning than any argument could. She froze, tears spilling as she whispered, "Even he hates me now." Evan's voice broke softly. "He doesn't hate you. He just knows." The silence that followed was unbearable. Clara began to sob, muttering apologies, promises, explanations that dissolved into air. Evan turned away. "Don't," he said quietly. "You'll only make it smaller if you try to explain it." She shook her head, desperate. It was one mistake, one. His voice hardened. No. It's not one. It's every night I thought you were tired. Every smile I thought was mine. Every lie I didn't see. Noah followed Evan as he stepped outside, the cold air biting against his skin. He sat on the porch, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. Noah lay beside him, resting his head on Evan's knee, eyes lifting toward him in quiet understanding. You saw it before I did, Evan whispered. You tried to tell me. The dog's tail thumped weakly against the wood, a wordless answer. He stayed there until the sky began to dim. Through the window, he could see Clara pacing, crying into her hands. For a moment, pity flickered inside him, but it was quickly replaced by something heavier, grief disguised as numbness. He never imagined love could die so quietly, without shouts, without breaking things, just slow, steady silence until it stopped breathing. When he went back inside, Clara stood near the table, clutching a framed picture of them and Noah. I ruined everything, she said softly. Evan looked at her, tired, hollow. You tested loyalty against temptation, he replied. And you lost the only one who never failed you. He nodded toward Noah, who stood watching her from the corner, eyes wide, unsure. She dropped to her knees, reaching out to the dog, but he stepped back. She froze, whispering, please. Noah tilted his head, then turned to Evan as if seeking permission. Evan said nothing that night. She tried to sit beside him on the couch, but he moved slightly away. Words had become useless. All that remained was air filled with the things they could no longer pretend. He could feel her watching him, desperate for something, anger, tears, even rejection, but he gave her none. Only silence. The next morning, she made breakfast like nothing happened. The smell of toast filled the kitchen again, but it felt like mockery now. Evan didn't eat. He sat quietly as Noah circled the table, finally lying down near the door, facing away. Clara watched them both, eyes red. Do you hate me? She asked finally. Evan shook his head. I don't. But I can't see you the same way again. Some things don't heal. They just become part of what we survive. She nodded, swallowing hard. I can fix it, she said, though even she didn't sound convinced. Evan's tone was almost gentle. You can't fix what you broke to feel alive. She flinched, tears spilling, but said nothing more. Days passed like blurred frames. She tried small gestures, notes on the counter, flowers, a soft kiss on his cheek that went unanswered. Each one felt forced, hollow. Noah avoided her, slept near the window instead of beside their bed. Evan noticed how Clara began to watch him the way someone watches a storm from far away, knowing it's coming but unable to move. One evening, she found Evan sitting with Noah near the same porch where the truth had broken. The sky was painted in gold and gray. I still love you, she said quietly. Evan didn't look at her. Then you should have remembered that before you needed someone else to remind you. Her tears came again, but he didn't comfort her. She stood there for a long moment before whispering, I'll go for a few days. Maybe space will help. He nodded slightly. Maybe. When she left, Noah sat by the door long after her car disappeared. Evan stroked his fur, whispering, You're the only one who stayed. The dog leaned closer, pressing his head against Evan's hand. Inside, the house felt both emptier and lighter, as if truth itself had opened a window. Evan looked around, noticing the framed pictures on the wall, the smiles, the memories, the illusion of forever. He took one down and set it face down on the table. That night, as he sat in the dark, Noah resting by his feet, Evan whispered to the quiet room, maybe heaven isn't forgiveness. Maybe it's learning when to stop asking for it. And for the first time in months, he breathed without waiting for a door to open or a light to arrive. The silence wasn't peace yet, but it was honest. And that was enough for now.
Weeks turned into months, but the night remained alive in Aisha's mind, resurfacing when she least expected it. She would be cooking and suddenly remember the way her hand lingered in his, or lying in bed and feel the ghost of his presence beside her. No matter how much time passed, the memory was not dulled, it sharpened in silence, refusing to fade. She had told herself it would become easier, that if she stayed quiet, life would return to normal, but instead the opposite happened. The guilt aged her faster, carving lines of exhaustion into her face, softening her laughter, dimming her spirit in ways no one seemed to notice except herself. Imran carried on as always, steady and predictable, his trust unwavering. That very trust became unbearable for her. She could not meet his eyes without feeling a crack in her chest, could not hear his gentle words without remembering how she had betrayed them. Every time he thanked her for something small, every time he praised her in front of family, she wanted to collapse under the weight of deception. Yet she smiled, played the role, and lived with the secret like a shadow that never left her side. Danish remained absent more than present. He excused himself from gatherings, declined invitations, and when he did appear, he kept his distance. Aisha knew it was deliberate, a way of protecting them both, but his absence cut deeper than she admitted. She had not realized how much she had leaned on his presence until it was gone. Now, when she looked across the room and found the empty space where he used to sit, she felt both relief and a sharp sting of loss. The irony was cruel. She had betrayed her husband for a connection that now no longer existed. She tried to busy herself with routines, burying guilt beneath chores and obligations, but it seeped through everything. Even in conversations with friends, she found herself distracted, responding with half smiles while her mind wandered back to the secret. She began avoiding mirrors, unable to hold her own gaze, as though her reflection accused her in ways no one else could. She prayed quietly at night, asking for forgiveness, but even prayers felt hollow when she knew she would never confess. Silence was her punishment, and she bore it with no end in sight. One afternoon, she saw Imran speaking on the phone with Danish, their voices warm, their friendship unchanged. The sound of his laughter, free of suspicion, pierced her heart. She realized then that it was not only her marriage she had betrayed but also the bond between two men who trusted each other completely. She imagined Imran's face if he ever learned the truth, the shock, the disbelief, the destruction. The image haunted her so deeply that it kept her awake for nights, staring at the ceiling, replaying every choice that had led her here. The passage of time did not heal, it only deepened the distance within her. She and Imran still shared a life, but intimacy had become impossible. Every touch felt dishonest, every kiss stained with memory. She found herself pulling away subtly, blaming tiredness, headaches, or distractions. Imran, unaware, accepted her excuses, but his patience only magnified her guilt. She wondered if he sensed something but chose not to question, or if he truly had no idea at all. Both possibilities unsettled her. Danish, too, was not untouched. When they occasionally crossed paths, his eyes betrayed what his silence concealed. He looked older, more burdened, carrying the same secret in his posture. Their exchanges were brief, polite, stripped of warmth, but beneath them lay an unspoken acknowledgement of the night that changed everything. Neither dared to speak of it, yet neither could forget. Their avoidance became its own confession, proof that what happened could never be undone. As seasons shifted, Aisha realized that the betrayal had not only broken her marriage in ways unseen but had also broken her own sense of self. She no longer recognized the woman she had become. She had once been steady, certain, believing in her own morality. Now she was fractured, hiding, carrying a truth that kept her locked in silence. The memory of Danish's touch was not a comfort anymore, it was a chain that bound her to guilt. She sometimes wondered if he regretted it as much as she did, or if, in secret moments, he too remembered it with longing. The not knowing was its own torture. She thought often about what might have been if she had resisted, if she had kept her distance, if she had walked through that night with discipline instead of surrender. She imagined a life where she looked at her husband without shame, where she spoke to Danish without heaviness, where her heart was free of this secret. But that life had been lost in a single night, and no amount of wishing could restore it. The danger they crossed was not just the act itself, it was the permanence of it. Infidelity was not a mistake that could be undone, it was a scar that marked every future moment. Aisha understood that now. She would carry the weight forever, even if no one else ever knew. The room they once shared existed only in memory, but it had rewritten the course of all their lives. She smiled when required, laughed when expected, played her role flawlessly, but inside she knew the truth. The night had changed her, and though she would never confess, she could never escape it. It was the dangerous line they crossed together, and its shadow would remain long after everything else faded. White heavy checkmark word count 770. Do you want me to also create a title plus description for the completed 4-section story, like we did before?